The morning of my wedding felt like a dream I had spent years waiting to live. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of the bridal suite, painting everything in soft gold. My bridesmaids buzzed around me with excitement, fixing flowers, adjusting dresses, and taking endless photos. Every mirror reflected the same thing: a woman who was finally marrying the man she loved. Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. We had survived long distance months, career struggles, and countless challenges. Through it all, one obstacle had remained constant: his mother, Patricia. From the moment we got engaged, Patricia made her feelings clear. She never openly told Daniel not to marry me. Instead, she delivered her disapproval through small cuts disguised as concern. "Are you sure she's mature enough for marriage? Daniel deserves someone who understands our family traditions. I just worry you're rushing into this." At family dinners, she would compare me to Daniel's ex-girlfriends. At holidays, she would criticize everything from my cooking to my career choices. No matter how hard I tried, I was never enough in her eyes. But today wasn't about Patricia. Today was about Daniel and me. As I walked down the aisle that afternoon, all my worries disappeared. Daniel stood waiting for me at the altar, his eyes shining with emotion. The moment he saw me, he smiled. Not the polite smile he gave strangers, not the smile he used for photographs, the real one, the smile that had made me fall in love with him. I felt tears gathering in my eyes as I reached him. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You don't look so bad yourself," I whispered back. The ceremony passed in a blur of laughter, happy tears, and promises. When we exchanged rings, applause filled the room. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Even Patricia appeared to behave herself. She sat quietly in the front row, smiling whenever someone looked her way. If I hadn't known her better, I might have believed she was happy for us. The reception began shortly afterward in a beautifully decorated ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, while white roses covered every table. Music floated through the air as guests danced, laughed, and celebrated. I spent the first hour greeting relatives and posing for photographs. Everywhere I turned, people offered congratulations. "You make such a beautiful couple. We're so happy for you. This is the best wedding we've attended in years." I couldn't stop smiling. Eventually, I stepped away from the crowd to catch my breath. That's when I noticed Patricia. She was standing beside the head table where my drink had been left. The moment our eyes met, she quickly moved away. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. It was subtle, just a tiny warning whispering that something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe years of tension had made me overly suspicious. A few minutes later, Patricia approached me holding a fresh glass of sparkling punch. Her smile looked unusually warm. "Here, Emma," she said sweetly. "You must be thirsty after all those photos." The kindness felt so unexpected that it caught me off guard. "Thank you," I replied. I accepted the glass. For a second, I thought perhaps this was her peace offering. Maybe she had finally decided to accept me. Maybe marriage had changed something. As I lifted the glass toward my lips, tiny specks caught my attention. Small particles swirled briefly through the liquid before disappearing. My hand froze. The room suddenly felt quieter. I stared at the drink, then at Patricia. Her eyes remained fixed on the glass, watching, waiting. A chill ran down my spine. I lowered the drink slowly and forced a smile. Across the room, my best friend Sophie noticed my expression immediately. She started walking toward me, and deep inside, I felt the first crack forming in what had been the happiest day of my life. I didn't know exactly what was wrong, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to drink that punch. The moment Sophie reached me, she could tell something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked quietly. I glanced toward Patricia, who was pretending to chat with a group of relatives while occasionally looking in my direction. "I think something's wrong with this drink," I whispered. Sophie's eyebrows rose. "What do you mean?" I explained what I had seen, the strange particles floating in the punch and Patricia's unusual behavior. As I spoke, Sophie's expression grew more serious. She knew all about the difficult relationship between Patricia and me. "You haven't drunk any of it, right?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not a sip." "Good." Without hesitation, Sophie took the glass from my hand. "Keep smiling and act normal," she said. "Let me handle this." Before I could ask what she planned to do, she disappeared into the crowd. I forced myself to continue greeting guests, but my mind was racing. Was I overreacting? Maybe the particles were harmless. Maybe Patricia had done nothing at all. But every time I looked across the room, I caught her watching me. Not casually, not naturally. She seemed focused on me in a way that made my skin crawl. 20 minutes later, Sophie returned. She looked concerned. "Come with me," she said. My stomach tightened. We slipped into a quiet hallway outside the ballroom where one of the wedding guests was waiting. It was Mark, a family friend who happened to be a pharmacist. Sophie's voice dropped. I asked Mark to look at the drink. Mark nodded. "I can't identify exactly what's in it without proper testing," he said carefully, "but something appears to have been added." The words hit me like ice water. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your concerns are reasonable." For several seconds, nobody spoke. I stared at the glass in Sophie's hands. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The idea that someone might have tampered with my drink felt unreal. Then Sophie pulled out her phone. "There's something else." She opened a video recorded by one of the guests during the reception. The footage showed the head table from across the room. I watched as Patricia approached my seat while nobody was nearby. She looked around carefully. Then she leaned over my drink. Her hand moved quickly. A few seconds later, she walked away. My heart dropped. The video wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. Enough to raise serious questions. Enough to destroy any remaining doubt I had. "Oh my God," I whispered. Sophie squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry." Tears threatened to form, but I refused to let them fall. Not today, not here. The hurt wasn't just about the drink. It was the betrayal. I had spent years trying to earn Patricia's approval. I had stayed polite when she insulted me. I had included her in wedding planning despite her criticism. I had given her chance after chance, and this was how she repaid me, by trying to humiliate me on my wedding day. Anger slowly replaced my shock. Not explosive anger, something colder, something calmer, something far more dangerous. Just then, Daniel found us. The moment he saw my face, he knew something was wrong. After watching the video, his expression darkened. "She did this?" he asked quietly. I nodded. For the first time in years, I saw genuine disappointment in his eyes when he thought about his mother. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I looked back toward the ballroom where Patricia was laughing with guests. She looked confident, comfortable, certain she had gotten away with whatever she had planned. A slow smile appeared on my face. "I don't want to expose her yet," I said. Sophie's eyes widened. "You don't." I shook my head. "No." Patricia thought she was the smartest person in the room. She thought she controlled the situation. What she didn't know was that her trap had failed. And before the night was over, she was going to learn exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate me. For the next hour, I played the role of the happy bride. I smiled for photographs. I danced with relatives. I thanked guests for attending. To everyone around me, I looked like a woman enjoying the most beautiful day of her life. Inside, however, my mind was working nonstop. Every time I glanced across the ballroom, I saw Patricia watching me. At first, she tried to be subtle, But as time passed, her curiosity became impossible to hide. She kept looking at my table, looking at my face, looking for some kind of reaction. The reaction she expected never came. No embarrassment, no sickness, no public humiliation, nothing. I could see the frustration growing behind her smile. Whatever she had slipped into my drink was supposed to affect me by now. Instead, I was laughing with guests and dancing with my new husband. Daniel stayed close to me the entire evening. Several times he asked if I wanted him to confront his mother immediately. Each time I shook my head. No, I whispered, not yet. Patricia had spent years making me feel unwelcome, years trying to convince me I wasn't good enough for her son. Tonight, I wanted her to expose herself. I wanted everyone to see the truth, not through accusations, not through arguments, but through her own actions. As the reception continued, an idea formed in my mind. A simple idea, an elegant one, and most importantly, a fair one. Near the dessert table, I quietly explained the plan to Sophie and Daniel. Sophie's eyes widened, then she laughed. "Oh, that's perfect." Daniel looked nervous. "Are you sure?" I nodded. Completely. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. The DJ announced a special family toast before the cake-cutting ceremony. Guests began gathering around the dance floor. Glasses were distributed throughout the ballroom. The room buzzed with excitement. This was exactly the moment I needed. I picked up the same drink Patricia had originally prepared for me. The glass had been safely kept aside all evening. My heart pounded as I walked toward her. Patricia looked surprised when I approached. "Patricia," I said warmly. She blinked. "Yes." I smiled sweetly. "I've been thinking." Her expression softened slightly. About what? About family. Nearby guests began listening. A few relatives turned their attention toward us. I continued smiling. "I know we haven't always agreed on everything." Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "But today is special," I said, "and I'd like us to share a toast together." Several guests smiled approvingly. Someone even clapped. Patricia clearly hadn't expected this. "Oh, that's very kind." I lifted the glass toward her. "This punch is the one you brought me earlier." For a brief second, all color disappeared from her face. I noticed it immediately. So did Daniel. So did Sophie. The panic was unmistakable. I think. I continued pleasantly. It would mean a lot if we drank together as a symbol of our new beginning. Patricia stared at the glass, then at me, then back at the glass. The room seemed to grow quieter. She knew exactly what was in that drink. And she knew I knew, but she couldn't admit it. Not with dozens of guests watching, not with her son standing nearby, not without exposing herself. A bead of sweat appeared near her forehead. "Is something wrong?" I asked innocently. No. Then let's toast." For several painful seconds, Patricia hesitated. Refusing would attract suspicion. Accepting could destroy her plan. She was trapped, the same way she had tried to trap me. Finally, forcing a shaky smile, she accepted the glass. I raised my own untouched champagne. To honesty, I said. Patricia's hand trembled. Then, surrounded by family and friends, she lifted the glass to her lips and drank. The guests applauded. Nobody understood what had just happened, but I did, Daniel did, and most importantly, Patricia did. For the first time all evening, I felt completely calm, because now all I had to do was wait, and sooner or later, the consequences of her own actions would arrive. The applause faded, and the reception returned to normal. Guests laughed, music filled the ballroom, and the celebration continued as if nothing unusual had happened. But I noticed Patricia. The confident smile she had worn all evening was gone. Instead, she seemed distracted, uneasy. Every few minutes she touched her stomach and glanced nervously around the room. I stood beside Daniel, calmly talking with relatives while secretly watching her. About 20 minutes after the toast, Patricia suddenly excused herself from a conversation and hurried toward the restroom. Daniel looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us said a word. We both understood. The consequences had arrived. Another 15 minutes passed before Patricia returned. She looked pale. Her carefully styled hair was slightly disheveled, and her forced smile was barely holding together. Several guests noticed, "Are you feeling okay?" One aunt asked. Patricia quickly nodded, just a little tired, but everyone could see something was wrong. The rest of the evening became increasingly uncomfortable for her. She made repeated trips away from the ballroom, each one more rushed than the last. Whispers began spreading among family members. People were confused. Meanwhile, I felt something unexpected. Relief not because Patricia was suffering, but because I had avoided becoming her victim. The humiliation she had planned for me had returned to her instead. Eventually, Daniel decided it was time. He quietly asked his mother to join us in a private room near the reception hall. I followed. So did Sophie. The moment the door closed behind us, Patricia's expression changed. "What is this?" she demanded. Daniel placed his phone on the table. Without speaking, he played the video. The footage showed her approaching my drink. Looking around, leaning over the glass, tampering with it, the room fell silent. Patricia stared at the screen. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then she looked away. "It's not what it looks like." Her voice sounded weak. Daniel's disappointment was obvious. "Then tell me what it is." Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me. For years, I had imagined confronting her. I thought I would feel anger. I thought I would yell. Instead, I felt calm. Why? I asked softly. The simple question seemed to break something inside her. Her shoulders slumped, and finally, the truth came out. She admitted she had slipped a strong laxative into my drink. Not enough to seriously hurt me, just enough to cause embarrassment, enough to ruin my wedding reception, enough to make me look foolish in front of hundreds of guests. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered. Daniel looked stunned. "You wanted to humiliate my wife on our wedding day." Patricia couldn't answer. The silence was answer enough. I took a deep breath. "You spent years trying to convince everyone I wasn't right for your son," I said. "Tonight, you proved something very different." She looked down. The only person who embarrassed themselves was you. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time since I had known her, she had no excuse, no defense, no way to blame someone else. Only the consequences of her own choices. When we returned to the reception, the celebration continued. I danced with Daniel. We cut our wedding cake. We laughed with friends, and for the first time all day, I felt completely free. Patricia left early that night. The story eventually spread through the family, and many relatives finally saw the truth about her behavior. As for Daniel, he stood firmly beside me. He made it clear that respect for our marriage was non-negotiable. Months later, when I looked back on my wedding day, I didn't remember the fear. I didn't remember the betrayal. I remembered the lesson. Some people spend so much time digging traps for others that they never notice they're standing on the edge themselves. Patricia tried to ruin the happiest day of my life. Instead, she exposed her own cruelty, and as Daniel and I drove away that night, beginning our new life together, I realized something important. The sweetest revenge isn't hurting someone back. It's letting the truth reveal them while you move forward and live happily without them. And that was exactly what I intended to do.